Greetings, Guzzlers. I'm going to show you how to make some chicken stock or chicken broth, okay, from scratch. So rather than buying your stock cubes or your stock pots or whatever, we're going to make this from scratch with a chicken and a few other ingredients. The main thing you're going to need is a big pot, because you've got to get that whole chicken into that pot. So I've got one here which is actually part of like a steamer type thing, and this has actually got a removable inner, which actually I think might be quite handy for when we want to remove the chicken and the other ingredients. So you get your big pot, get yourself a coffee, and we'll get started. So I've got some celery. I've got like 2 sticks of celery, and we're just going to chop them into some pieces, and we chuck that in. Makes a nice noise, doesn't it? And same with the carrots. I'm just going to chop the carrots roughly, and again in they go. So the next thing we're going to need is 1 large brown onion. Well, I thought it was a little small, so I've got 1 medium and 1 small. You're going to want a whole bulb of garlic, so I'm going to get me onion peeled and my garlic peeled, okay, and then we'll be chucking all that in there. So that's them peeled. So what I'm going to do with the onion is quarter it and chuck that in there, and we're then just going to chuck those garlic cloves in there as well. Now we're going to add a few sort of spices, if you like. You're going to want some salt, some pepper, black peppercorns. I've got about ½ teaspoon to a teaspoon of those. My bay leaves are a bit old and dried. If you've got some much fresher ones, probably 1 big bay leaf. But given how old these are, if you like, I've got, I don't know, about 7 in there. And some fresh oregano. Now I haven't got any oregano, not fresh anyway, so I've got dried. So anyway, that's got the veg in there. So our next thing is to get our chicken. It's weird, whenever we buy chicken breasts or anything like that, they seem to be like 3-breasted or 3-legged. But this looks like a normal chicken to me. So that goes into your stock pot. Now I did earlier feel that I might not have a big enough pot to get that in there, because obviously we've got to get some liquid in there as well. So I was thinking I might have to like chop it up, but that goes in there. Okay, so I'm just going to obviously wash up, because I've been adding that raw chicken, and then we'll get the final bit all in there. So in goes those bay leaves, in goes the oregano, and in goes those peppercorns. And then the final thing is, I've got these just like quite big flakes, if you like. So I'm going to give a couple of good sprinkles of salt, and then that is all the ingredients for our broth, apart from obviously we haven't got any liquid. So at this point we're going to add just under 4 litres of water. Okay, you might not get your chicken fully covered, but so long as the majority of it, you know, is in the liquid. Although I've got a feeling I might have to add a little bit more water, because this is a big pan. So as it happens, 4 litres, it's just about done it. So I'm now just going to put it on some heat, and we want to bring that up to a boil. And once that's up to a boil, we're going to just turn it down, sort of lowish, but we just want to keep it simmering, and we'll simmer it for about 45 or so minutes, basically until that chicken is cooked. Periodically, you want to get a spoon, you will get sort of scum forming you know, particularly from that chicken, you want to keep skimming that off. So I've got a little bowl there, I've got a spoon. Other than that, you just let it simmer away. And like I say, once that chicken's cooked, turn off the heat, and then we'll move on to getting that final sort of stages of that broth. Okay, that's had about 50-55 minutes. I did check the temperature of the meat on the bone. It was cooked, if you like, but I just thought I'm going to give it just a little bit longer. Now, what we now need to do is obviously strain it. Now, we're keeping the chicken, we're going to use the meat, okay, so the chicken don't go to waste, but everything else, you know, you bin basically. So this needs straining. Now, in my case, because I've got it in this sort of like container with a built-in strainer, I can lift the majority of the stuff straight out. Okay, but so what I've got there is just like a baking tray as such, so that I can obviously stop it making a mess of me. And then we're going to remove the chicken. Now, the broth you can just leave like it is. So I'm just going to tip it the other way in case there's any broth up in the other end of the chicken. You can just leave that broth like that, strain it through a fine sieve or through some sort of like cheesecloth muslin or something like that, through a colander, and then that stock you can, once it's obviously cooled, put it in a suitable container and freeze it, and you can keep for up to 6 months, or you can use it for something else. But if you want some more flavour, what we're going to do is we're going to add the chicken bones back into that. So I'm going to let the chicken cool. Now, let it cool obviously means you can handle it, but also it makes it a bit easier to get the meat off the bone. Funny noise then. So I'm not going to bother straining that because I'm going to be putting the bones back in. Okay, so I'm just going to move that out of the way, and like I say, we're just going to let that cool a little bit before we can then separate the chicken out from all the other mess and also get the meat off. First thing I'm going to want to do is get rid of the skin. Okay, all this skin, all the veg, like I say, we're just going to discard that. It's still quite hot, this, at the moment. And like I said, obviously it'd be waste not to use the chicken. Okay, so we will be separating the chicken meat and keeping that and using it for something else. And then as soon as I've got it down to the bare bones, the bones are going back in there to be further flavour, if you like. So there you have the bones back in there. This time we're going to cover it. I did have it partly covered during the initial boil. You just have to be careful because it does try to boil over. I haven't got the strainer in this time. So the bones are in there, and what we're going to do is put that onto a low simmer, and we're just going to let that simmer away for an hour to extract maximum flavour from the bones, and then we'll be straining it and the broth's done. So that's had another hour, and what we're now going to do is going to sieve it. Now I'm not going to attempt to tip that up and pour that through my little sieve because it will go bloody everywhere. So I'm just going to ladle out a bit at a time and put it through this sieve just to get out all them odd bits. Okay, remember we've got the bones, this little bits of chicken that's come off the bone that didn't get separated. So it's just a matter of getting that all strained, and then perhaps when it's cooled a little bit, we just have a little taster. Although at the end of the day, remember, this is just a chicken stock, okay, or broth. Although you can't really see properly, it hasn't magically vanished. I've actually transferred a quantity into a pan that I'm going to use for something else. But quite a nice little clear broth now, a bit of colour to it. Let's try, it's still quite hot. It's chicken. Got a little bit of sort of peppery, not a lot. Overwhelmingly it's chicken stock, chicken broth. So there you go. That's making it from scratch.